to Joe Cheshire from WCS Care, who is working, as I think Russell mentioned, with Oxford, and I'm privileged to be part of that team to look at lighting in that context. And then we're going to finish off with a conversation with Michelle Borison from Goodison Health in the States, who's also been looking at using circadian lighting in their space. And then at the end, for those who want to stay, Helen Looms is going to make some brief summary remarks. And then those who want to stay is going to host a conversation between the residential care providers for those who'd like to stay and ask them some additional questions. So now I'd like to pass over to Joe Cheshire, and I'm just going to place your information in the chat so that everybody knows about you, and thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Shelley. So I'll rattle through, I'll go through some slides quite quickly. Basically, we're a charity. We've got 13 care homes. We're lucky we're all in Warwickshire, so all of our care homes are in quite a small area. So we're known in the UK sector for our innovation. I'll just run through a little bit of why we're so interested in innovation. If you've never seen the video Uninvited Guests, I'm not going to play it, but I would recommend it. It's a fantastic video that talks about all the gadgets and gizmos that people introduce into care homes and other settings to supposedly help residents, but they're often gadgets that can then be put in a drawer or ignored, compared to something like your circadian lighting, which actually is integral to the building and just delivers its impacts continually in the background with nobody having to remember to use it. So we always look at the innovations through the lens of, will it contribute to health, well-being, the impact for staff using something, as much as the impact on residents as well. So a bit about our journey. We've introduced quite a lot of tech into our homes. Acoustic monitoring, which some of you might be familiar with, wasn't used in the UK until we introduced it, which has had a massive impact on reducing nighttime falls in our homes. We use electronic care planning as well. So we're getting thousands of recorded pieces of data every day on our care plans now and our care records. So we're actually inundated with data that can really help us analyse what is going on in the homes. That has a relatives gateway that lets our relatives see care in real time as well. Circadian lighting, which we'll obviously talk more about, and then actually the design of our buildings is changing as we're realising that we can build differently to encourage people to get outside more, be more actively involved in their day-to-day lives. Just because you're living in a care home doesn't mean that actually you can't cook, clean, do all those things that you're used to doing. So we're interested in circadian lighting because of a lot of the impacts of dementia are very similar to lack of sleep. So for those of our residents who have dementia, obviously that lack of sleep then layers on extra behaviours, which then our staff have to manage, and it's not nice for staff, it's not nice for the resident, it's not nice for relatives. So anything that we can do to impact on the health and well-being of our residents is something that we're going to investigate. So there's a video link there for you. I'm not going to play it today because that would take up quite a bit of my speaking slot, but I've put the link in there, and I know Shelley will share this later, but that really explains our bit of our journey so far. So you'll see from the photo that there's one light in this building, which is a beautiful orange. That was our innovation hub where we first installed a demo of circadian lighting when we first started talking about this, probably about 8 years ago now actually, and we were showing visitors to our innovation hub what circadian lighting's potential was. At the same time, we retrofit a circadian lighting system just into the ground floor and one household in another of our care homes, and did a little bit of a study with Coventry University. So we used the Bradford Dementia Mapping tool for this, and you can see that 1 week before installation, we had 26% of residents who were in a negative mood. The smaller graph there in the middle is after 3 weeks, but after 8 weeks, you can see that actually the mood of our residents had shifted significantly. and the only thing that had changed in this home was the installation of the circadian lighting. This is a home that also uses acoustic monitoring at night, which also does help residents to sleep better. So some of the impacts of these, of this installation, quite a bit similar to some of the things that Kirsten was just talking about. Calmer residents. Residents could be de-escalated if they were getting upset or were having disagreements. Things that Russell touched on earlier, we've got fewer residents who are nutritionally at risk who live on that household. Generally, they are better orientated. They rarely walk without purpose, and they definitely sleep better. And in fact, the residents who live on this household during COVID came out of isolation better than the residents who live in the other households in this home, which was something that we weren't anticipating. So even our relatives recognise the difference that this was having for their loved ones, and we would have relatives bringing their loved ones who lived on the other floors down into the public area of the home where the lighting is, and they recognised that they had a pleasant visit in the circadian lighting, and often their relative was calmer in that environment. As far as staff goes, they did prefer to complete paperwork in the brighter daylight, but staff slept better once they got home, and they reported reductions in SAD symptoms as well. Definitely improvement staff mood. Chicken and egg, one of those things of, because the staff's mood had improved, were they better with the residents and therefore the residents' mood improved, or is it the behaviours in the residents had changed and therefore the carer's job was easier? At the end of the day, there was a significant change for everybody that was quite noticeable. Managers noticed the change in the staff team. All the staff would recommend the installation of the lighting, definitely felt the difference, and actually felt that the process had gone quite smoothly, and they are desperate actually in this home to have it installed across the rest of their households. So in 2019, we opened Woodside Care Village. Woodside is designed as a home based slightly on the model from De Hogebeke, if you've heard of De Hogebeke in the Netherlands. So it has no indoor corridors. All of the corridors are outside. It's designed to encourage people to get outdoors for natural daylight wherever possible, but the home has circadian lighting throughout. There's a case study there of one of our residents who moved from another of our homes into Woodside, settled very, very quickly. His falls reduced, the family noticed a significant difference in him, and actually the son, who was paramedic, had said that he'd never seen anything like it when he saw the change in his father. So continuing with the theme of outdoor time, the design of our buildings, certainly in the UK, can limit residents getting outside. We heard a stat, unfortunately we can't trace it now, that a lot of residents in care homes only get outside for about 3 minutes a month, which is horrendous, but it's very believable, because actually people move into care homes with only slippers and dressing gowns. They don't come with shoes and coats, and actually the barriers to getting outside can be many, from locked doors to staff who are too tied up and busy with other residents. So one of our things that we do is we look at risk very differently, and we keep our doors to the outside open, and we expect residents to be able to go outside freely. They are good at judging their own risk. And often even those residents with dementia. So if you make those spaces accessible, actually encouraging people to get outside is really important. And one of the things we do is have a target. So one of the advantages of having electronic care planning is that we can measure and record how much time people spend outside. So you can see we do our own data gathering. But it can be hard, and that's why we're so pleased to be working with Russell and Stuart and Oxford and looking at the PhD, because we really want to be gathering better data that will evidence the impact of the lighting. You know, we have stories about the reduction in medication for depression, for example, at Woodside, but it would be really nice to capture a lot more of this in a much more structured way. So progress to date. So this is a picture of Woodside. So you can see the one home has the full circadian lighting. We've got Drover's House that has a third of the lighting, but we actually have another 11 homes that we really want to retrofit lighting into, and that is tricky. One of those is another new build home, but the rest are quite old buildings from the 1950s and 60s, and of course they've got residents and staff in them, so we need to figure out how to retrofit into those buildings in a way that doesn't disrupt the life of those residents. And just to think about the scale and opportunity that there is in the UK, there are nearly 500,000 registered bed spaces, but a lot of these buildings are really old buildings. So what we'd love to do is achieve a model and spec for the lighting which actually makes it really possible and feasible for the UK care sector to adopt this kind of lighting, because if we're seeing the impacts for residents that we are, the ripple effect if the industry started to adopt it would be really quite significant, and linking into reduced hospital admissions, reduced costs, but key is that health and well-being for residents. So what we'd like to achieve, our acoustic monitoring success story is quite interesting. We were the first in the UK to introduce acoustics. We were able to evidence that that had a very big impact on reduction of falls at night and during the day for residents. And we shared our experience of that technology through our innovation hub. It got picked up by the UK regulator, the CQC, and they shared it in a report that they produce every year. And then slowly it started to be noticed by the Department of Health and Social Care and others. And eventually that technology is now being funded through the NHS Transformation Directorate. We would like to see a similar direction of travel for circadian lighting. And then actually, if that funding is made available, it will become a much more expected component potentially of new builds, but also possible for older buildings to retrofit it. And actually, potentially customers will ask for it. We certainly get customers who choose us because of the technology that we use. So here's a photo of one of our older buildings. You can see the beautiful lights in this 1960s building and one of the corridors. So we have done work to improve lux levels in corridors already, and we do see a difference for that. But we do need to be thinking about the lux levels, the energy savings. We don't want to be wiring in, we don't want to be chiseling out walls and disrupting people's lives in these homes. So can we achieve it with a wired or non-wired system? Obviously costs are huge, and then the disruption to residents. So when we started this, the stuff that we wish we'd known, what our technical spec was going to be, we've had fascinating conversations with Oxford, Shelley and John Bullock, who are pulling together all of that spec, and we've learned such a lot about what we actually need to deliver this in the homes. Actually, the difficulty of finding retrofit options that are cost effective, that we would be prepared to invest in, that don't have long ongoing costs associated with them. It took us a while to get academic interest, and we're so thrilled that we have it. And then ultimately, can we link falls or other health and well-being benefits to funding? Because that's hard, and with acoustics, it took us the best part of 7 years for that journey to happen. Having done it once, it will be interesting to see if we can achieve that much quicker. Thank you.
Oh my word, another inspiring story. Thank you so much. It's yeah, fabulous, and what a privilege to be working with you. And the points you make are all so well made, including the ones at the end about retrofit, about this needing to be affordable and actually a no-brainer across the sector.